Welcome back, guys and girls. It is July 11th, 2019, 8:26 p.m., and we are doing our daily update for official, as of this morning, Tropical Storm Barry. We knew it was coming. We still have a chance for Category 1 upon landfall, which is now expected to be in Louisiana around Saturday morning. That is showing on both of our GFS and GFS legacy charts. We are clearly seeing the counterclockwise spin now in the Gulf. In fact, I'm going to do a little reading real quick while I have this chart up for you, because this is going to be a very unique storm in many different ways. Not so much in the power of the hurricane itself, if it becomes a Category 1, regardless. The fact that we have tropical storm right now with the amount of moisture in the Gulf that is just unbelievable, and the moisture already flooding the Mississippi River. Louisiana already has closed highways, roads, you name it. They are already underwater, and this thing has not even hit yet. What you're beginning to see now is Barry counterclockwise spinning at the lower level clouds. The upper level clouds are the main storms that are providing the moisture down at the bottom level. We're starting to see that connect through a line right through the heart of Louisiana right now. And it kind of follows Highway 49. If you take a look at Google Earth here and you zoom in, actually, if we back out first, that line of storms getting pulled right through here and now interacting with the low pressure system, which is just south of the Mississippi Delta. The low pressure of this storm right now is right here. You could see that clear as day on all these charts. You could see right here is the area of central low pressure, and everything else around it is going to begin to start clicking and turning counterclockwise. And as it does so, you're going to start seeing these strips of weather, just like this one right here. This one's beginning to connect with the higher altitude clouds. It's going to start spinning in a counterclockwise motion, and they're going to see that change over to the east side. And that's going to begin to connect with this mess going up to the northeast. I haven't even had a chance yet to really talk about these storms. My brother's currently stuck in Philadelphia right now. They're having major rainstorms down in Philadelphia. Hopefully those end soon, as it looks like they will be. They're exiting the Chesapeake Bay. But all of this, guys, is playing a part in what will soon to be tropical storm and or hurricane Category 1 Barry. And you're going to see a strip of moisture that's going to come up through Florida and then up the entire East Coast, more than likely, unless this high pressure that's above it pushes it out first. But with that said, we have some stuff to talk about and some information we need to get out to people. So, Tropical Storm Barry formed Thursday morning. That would be this morning officially in the northern Gulf of Mexico, and may become a hurricane before landfall this weekend. When you look at this chart, you see these S's. That means storm, tropical storm. You don't see the H there, but they still believe that it's possible that this could be a Category 1 at landfall. And I want you to pay attention to exactly where they are expecting this to happen. We have a little bit of a shift to the east, and that is being agreed upon on both models. Now I'm going to show you the GFS first, and then we're going to look at the legacy. Now the GFS is actually kind of more on point, it looks to me, than the legacy at this point. So if I bring it back to current time right now, well, here's the 12th. This will be the first 6 hours of the 12th. We can see the low pressure is right there, just underneath the Louisiana Delta line, basically. It's like about 100 miles off the coast of the southeast portion of Louisiana. It's expected to shift a little bit more south and then a little bit to the west, and then we're going to be looking at this. Where do we got it? We got it somewhere here. There we go, our spaghetti plots. So again, you can see where the central low pressure is right now, and these are the spaghetti plots. At least 50, 60, maybe 70% of these take this thing onto the west side, or east side rather, of Louisiana. That would be right around here. This is the area already just decimated with flooding, people being displaced. They have evacuations going on. And while I have you look at this chart real quick, in fact, yeah, let's keep this one on because you can really see the rotation going here. This is going from last night into today into the beginning of this evening. That's why you're seeing the dark pass over, but you're clearly seeing the counterclockwise spin underneath these high level clouds, which will eventually be part of that counterclockwise spin. And we're going to actually see a storm out of this. We're going to see this thing tighten up, and we're going to actually see that hurricane form that we're used to seeing, which is right around there. Now, this is all going to depend on how long this thing stays in the Gulf, and before it shoots north, that will determine how powerful this thing will be on landfall. But again, regardless, this is going to be a flood storm, and a different type of flood storm. Now, as far as what I said about the reading part, let me get you on a screen here where you guys can look at some visuals while I read this to you, because I believe it's a website I cannot really show at the moment, but this is what they got, excuse me, as the latest as far as this mixing in with the Mississippi River and the pollution of the Mississippi River. If we got to remember, the river has been flooding for weeks now, and it all moves south, and it's coming into the Gulf, and there's a big part of the Gulf that is very, it's just very unhealthy, bacteria-filled water, and this happens anytime the Mississippi River overflows its banks. It brings with it all that stuff and unnatural particles and, things from farms, chemicals, things of that nature. It comes all the way down the Mississippi and ends up in the Gulf. Every year we deal with some sort of area or a portion of the Gulf that has very high bacteria filled water. Basically stuff you don't want to be in. They call it a dead zone, and this one has been a lot bigger than usual. And because this storm is in the Gulf and moving so slow, about 5 miles per hour, this thing is moving. It's just sitting there. What it's doing is it's churning up all this water, and when it finally does make its approach north, it's going to bring with it all that stuff that's been running down the Mississippi River over the last month, basically, right back up into Louisiana, into these areas that are already flooded. Like I said, there's been mandatory evacuations plus elective evacuations. Basically, it's up to you. In my opinion, if you live on the coastline of Louisiana, I would make plans to get out of there within the next 24 hours. Do yourselves a favor if you have the ability to do so. And I'm not saying that because it's going to be a powerful hurricane. I'm doing that because the storm surge and the amount of water that is associated with this storm is just as bad, if not worse, than something like a Category 2 or 3 flying into land and, doing wind damage. Flood damage is just as bad, if not worse, than wind damage. Things can be fixed, guys, so people can't. We need to understand that people that are in mandatory evacuation areas really need to listen to this type of stuff. And you can even see here, as this is spinning, those big storms, those high clouds are starting to connect right across the dead center of Louisiana. So this is really starting to pick up, and it's not going to stop for the next solid 3 days. So with that said, let me read this to you. The Mississippi River, which is usually 6 to 8 feet in midsummer in the Big Easy, is now at 16 feet. So we are already double where we should be at this time of year as far as feet of water in the Mississippi River. Now, we've been talking about this for a while now. We all know the Mississippi River has overflowed its banks in many areas. Now, owing to record flooding that's taken place this year along the entire waterway of the Mississippi River. That's basically saying that they have been dealing with this for weeks now. In the meantime, Barry is spinning away in the Gulf of Mexico, threatening a storm surge of 2 to 3 feet at the mouth of the river. Now, you take that 16 feet we already have, you add 2 or 3 feet to that, we're talking 19, possibly 20 feet of water, which would certainly go over the levees that they have. But that's not even the biggest issue here. It's the water that's already in place that is the issue. So we got to understand that we are going to have a major flood in an area that is already flooded. So there's really nowhere for anyone to go unless you just move inland. And once that happens, we're going to be able to see exactly where the storm goes, depending on where it makes the landfall, and then depending on the jet stream and the different high and low pressures in the United States at the time will determine where the rest of that moisture goes. This storm is going to drench a lot of states, not just Louisiana. Louisiana will get the punch of this storm, but then it's going to follow a path up into the northeast and saturate other states along with it. A very important thing to remember with these storms when they spin counterclockwise, guys, is that when a storm is spinning counterclockwise, the flow of water is coming in this way and then being pulled out this way. So if you notice, this darker pink color here is where they're expecting the main storm surge of this Barry storm. And that is because the central area of the storm will be over here making landfall about mid-Louisiana, but the storm surge area is going to be where that storm is counterclockwise spinning the water into the coastline. Basically, I'll show you on Google Earth here, the Mississippi Delta is the area that they are watching. And in fact, they're setting up news crews in parts of Mississippi because they're expecting a ridiculous amount of rain along this part of Mississippi as well. That's because once this storm makes landfall, and get about right here, I want to say, is the average between the GFS Legacy and the GFS as of now. Even mainstream media, they still do not quite know where this thing is going to go. They don't even know how much longer it's going to stay in the Gulf based on what's going on around it. It's kind of just sitting still, 5 miles per hour. That's a very slow-moving storm. A lot of time to rejuvenate itself, a lot of time over water and over this part of Louisiana is just going to continue to soak everything it touches. And that's because of the Gulf itself, the moisture in the air. We showed you the Cape situation going on. That is the atmospheric breakdown, basically, that we had that during tornado season as well. The Cape numbers are very high, so the atmosphere around this area is just so filled with water that there's no way that there's not going to be significant flooding due to this storm on top of already existing flooding, long story short. So that's why they have this highlighted pink here, and then they have the secondary storm surge here, which goes into Mississippi. So this area right here, as of right now, is probably going to get hit very hard. I'm assuming this will be a mandatory evacuation area. In fact, as far as the evacuations go, let's see. Barry is set to be the first tropical system to hit the United States this year. It is moving slowly. We covered that. The Weather Service said residents of the coast and in the lower Mississippi Valley could see heavy rainfall through the weekend and into early next week. So this is more than just one day. This is not going to be a one-day hit and then it comes and goes. This has been going on. It's going to continue to go on. That's why this storm is a very unique storm and does not need to be a Category 2 or 3 to do the amount of damage that one would do. This could be a tropical depression and do just as bad a damage as a Category 2 or 3 storm. That is the point I'm trying to make here. The mayor goes on to say, look, there are 3 ways that Louisiana floods: storm surge, high rivers, and rain. The governor, John Bell Edwards, said Thursday, we are going to have all 3. So he's basically saying the state of emergency was declared because of that. Jefferson, St. Bernard, Plaquemines, and St. Charles parishes are all under state of emergency. The Jefferson Parish have instituted mandatory evacuations as a precaution because it's a low-lying area. It's one of those areas that's basically below sea level, so it will flood first. That's obviously where you would want the mandatory evacuations first. Secondary evacuations would be more inland, even areas above sea level. Once we get to that Category 1 level, if we do, that is when you're going to want to watch out for that. But looking at the track here and just watching it over and over again, you see the low center of pressure right here, and it's pulling that water in here. So I want to say this thing's going to start really rolling right about here. And the second that pressure releases, as you saw in the spaghetti plots, it's going to want to start coming up in this direction, and then it's going to start hooking this way. So it's going to bring all this moisture with it. So we got storms being pulled down. Let's get back to that other, where is it? This one here. you could still see the counterclockwise spin underneath these high-level clouds, but this connection right here you're about to see right there, that connection, that's important because now that is fueling and even adding more moisture to what's already going through Louisiana and Mississippi and then up into the East Coast. And then once that makes its way over the border of Mississippi, Alabama, that's in the Gulf, you're going to see that line stretch this way, if that makes sense. I know I'm talking a lot here, but it's a lot of information to put out at once to try to get people to understand that this storm, even though it doesn't look like a hurricane, the amount of water that you're looking at right now is unbelievable. Basically, their pumping systems that they're using right now in Louisiana are pumping out the amount of water an Olympic swimming pool holds every 5 seconds. Think about that. An Olympic-sized swimming pool being pumped out of areas of Louisiana already, and the storm hasn't even hit yet, every 5 seconds just to keep things from going chaotic. Now we need to think about when the storm actually does hit and at what category it's going to be at, whether it's category 1. It all depends on how long it's going to be in this Gulf. The longer it stays here, the worse it's going to be. That is basically the bottom line of this situation. Over the next 24 hours is going to be absolutely key. In fact, probably the next 12 hours, we're going to have a lot more information about exactly where this thing's going to have its biggest effect, and it's always going to be on the east side of the storm because when we spin counterclockwise, the water that gets pulled in to the coast from these types of storms is always the areas that get hit the hardest with the storm surge. And when you're talking about Louisiana with all the marshland and all the inlets and the rivers and creeks, it's just one of those areas that just gets completely flooded with water. And then again, with the Mississippi River having polluted many areas of the river itself and the Gulf, that water's all going to be pushed right back up into Louisiana. Now, again, Mississippi, Alabama, unfortunately, you're going to be part of this as well. How much is still not quite sure yet. Just be prepared is what I'm trying to say, because when you have the mainstream media not knowing exactly what's going on, that's not always something you want to hear about or, have to be left with wondering. So that's why we're doing our best here to try to give you an idea of where the worst spots are going to be hit. Anywhere from basically where my mouse is now, the entire panhandle of Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and the entire coast of Louisiana, and even parts of Texas. They're getting hit with storms right now as we speak. You're not seeing much as far as our radar scope. We are seeing a little bit here near Jackson, Mississippi, a severe weather system there. That is part of what's being pulled down from this strip of moisture that's up in the northeast right now. Again, like I said, my brother's stuck in Philadelphia right now trying to make it home. And there's just, the weather is so horrible there that he can't even get out of the area. So we're seeing this moisture moving down while we're seeing Barry spin in the Gulf, and it just looks like this chaotic mess that no one can make sense of, which makes sense to me because it's weather. This is how weather works. We don't, it's hard to predict, it's hard to follow, but now that we're getting into that 2 to 3 day range where we know when it's going to get to the coast. We're kind of getting that detail that we really need to warn the right people. That's why the evacuations are going on, and that's why people of Louisiana and especially the coast of Mississippi and Alabama really need to pay attention to their area. And there's many websites you can go. You can literally type in Louisiana counties under evacuation. I mean, it could be that simple. I should have had that page pulled up for you. I'll do that in the next update. But with that said, I wanted to get this info out to you guys. We are starting to connect with weather up in the U.S. It is now being pulled down in a counterclockwise motion right through the heart of Louisiana. Look at that. Boom. Again, another just explosion of moisture. High-level clouds, very powerful storms underneath them. They're all going to come down into the Gulf, and then we need to sit and just watch and see how long this thing is going to sit in the Gulf before it decides to make that northern turn. And we'll back up again. We'll take one more look. In fact, we'll change this to the legacy just to show you the difference. Now you can see again the low area of central pressure is in the same spot. That's where they do agree. but they do not agree on whether or not it's going to be this far east or if it's going to be right there. See, they're starting to agree a little more. Bottom line is it's going to be the east coast of Louisiana and the small part of the coast of Mississippi that extends out into the Gulf of Mexico because of the counterclockwise spin. Now, the 996, that's a good thing. That's a fairly high number for a storm. We're hoping that this stays tropical and does not get into that Category 1 range. It is possible, though, and when we hit those numbers, it's just going to be that much more wind pushing more water into the area. So I think I've done enough talking for this video. If you have to slow it down, go right ahead. I know it's a lot of information to take in, but there's a lot of information to put out, and it's coming in every couple hours now. When you get this close to land, and we're talking about the U.S. here, and our second tropical storm in a very anticipated season, you got to understand people are going to be on their toes with this every hour on the hour. So we're doing everything we can here to get you guys the correct information, but basically seeing is believing. Right now what you're seeing is what you're getting. We're getting the counterclockwise spin. We're getting very high level clouds, very powerful storms in the Gulf, and then eventually this thing is going to tighten up and it's going to shoot north, and we need to be prepared for that, and the people of Louisiana especially need to be prepared for that. Now, not to add any salt to an open wound here, but we do have another possible invest out in the ocean right now, unfortunately, and this one is coming from the west coast here of Africa. A 10% chance of formation over the next 5 days. They actually already have spaghetti plots out for this. The black triangle represents the current direction of that storm, and the other spaghetti plots are what they are guessing this storm's going to do as of now. 10% chance over 5 days. Not something we really need to be thinking about right this second as we are dealing with a storm in the Gulf, as in Barry, but this could certainly become our next storm. We could read right here, a tropical disturbance in the eastern Atlantic Ocean has a chance to develop over the next few days. There is a chance it could become a tropical depression or storm, but it should eventually encounter a hostile environment as far as shear wind they are talking. Right now, the shear winds have kind of calmed down, which is why you're seeing the Gulf allowing Barry to strengthen the way it is for now. Speaking of, for now, this is not a significant threat to the Windward Islands. So basically they're talking, we're days away from having to even speak about this storm, and we'll be talking about this way more than this over the next coming days. But this chart here just shows you storms that have formed basically around this time in July, where it shows you they could basically form in any part of the Atlantic Ocean, including the Gulf, which is where we have Barry now. We've had some in the South Caribbean. We've had a lot form under the Leeward Islands. And then a lot of hurricanes form, literally form by the Bahamas and then out by the Carolinas. But they usually are pushed out by the jet stream before they can make land interaction. We just got to wait and see. But with that said, guys, I think I've done enough talking. Once again, I will be back with an update either later tonight if we can get a live stream out. If not, tomorrow, certainly live stream, because we need to start covering this live. The information's coming in too quick to do a video and then have it get posted and have the info be basically null and void because more things have changed. So basically what we need to know right now is that Barry is a serious storm. It's going to stay serious, and the longer it stays in the Gulf of Mexico, the worse it's going to be, because this place is just electrified with water right now. Everywhere in the Gulf, any sort of moisture hits is going to be a major storm, and just seeing that connection now in the middle of Louisiana is really starting to make things real, and you're going to start seeing a lot of this going on in the next 12 hours. So with that said, guys, I'm going to let you go. I know this was a long one. Sorry about that, but we had to get the info out there. I will talk to you all very soon. Please stay safe. Listen to your local radio, local TV, local weather stations about evacuations. Those are the most important parts about this storm, especially for those of you in Louisiana. And on that, I would say western tip of Mississippi. Basically, this entire chunk of Mississippi needs to be on alert too, especially if this thing decides to follow one of these paths, which would bring a lot of water into these areas here. Okay, remember the counterclockwise brings water in a counterclockwise direction, and then it'll pull water out of some areas, pushing it into others. So, all right, guys, that's it for me. I will talk to you all very soon. Thank you for your patience, and we'll be back shortly.